So, last one for ethics then. We have euthanasia. Don't forget, do not forget in your exam, you could get two types of questions. You could get one that's specifically on euthanasia, so it might say sanctity of life is no longer relevant, the focus should be on quality of life discussed. You would still bring in natural law and situation ethics, or you might get a question on natural law or situation ethics, or even both of them, that says something like natural law is better than situation ethics when dealing with moral issues, moral dilemmas. The moral issues and the moral dilemmas are euthanasia. Don't suddenly think, oh, I think I'm going to talk about genetic engineering because I watched a programme last night on cloning. No, it has to be euthanasia. So, top first box is for Joseph Fletcher. Now, you don't have to write the whole quote down, but it's a fairly shocking statement to make, which you can discuss in your essay if you wish. The statement is this: people with children with Down syndrome have no reason to feel guilty about putting a Down syndrome baby away, whether it's put away in the sense of hidden in a sanatorium or in a more responsible, lethal sense. It is sad, yes, dreadful, but carries no guilt. True guilt arises only from an offence against a person, and a Downs is not a person. We will see at the end of this PowerPoint Fletcher's 12 things that you need in order to be classified as a person. And because someone with Down syndrome does not meet all of those 12 or all of those 12 sufficiently, they are not a person and therefore can be given a lethal injection. So in an exam, you can use this as a stimulus in order to discuss further. You can explore it, you can look at the different views. The whole point of essays is to evaluate. If this doesn't stir something, whether it's positive or negative towards it, it should do. All right, moving into the box underneath. The box underneath is looks messy because there's loads of parts to the same box, but it's quite simple when you see the slide. So you have the top long thin part of the box for the top 2 bullet points. The euthanasia is from the Greek EU, thanatos, meaning easy death. The bullet point underneath it's an intentional premature ending of another person's life. That goes in the long thin part of the box. You've then got 4 sections underneath. One for voluntary, one for non-voluntary, one for active, one for passive. It's about keeping them separate so you remember that there's different types and different approaches. So, voluntary is when you say you want to die. You volunteer. Non-voluntary is if you're in a PVS, a persistent vegetative state, a coma. You cannot volunteer, therefore it's non-voluntary. Active, which is illegal in this country, is when you give a lethal dose to deliberately kill someone. Passive euthanasia or non-treatment decision. So non-treatment meaning you don't get treatment, such as life support or chemotherapy. That is legal in the UK and it's known as passive euthanasia. Because you know if you're terminal for cancer or even stage 3 cancer, for example, if you don't have chemotherapy, the chances are it will then turn into stage 4. So you are withholding taking medication, and that is passive euthanasia because you know essentially you are not taking what it is that you need.
So the box voluntary, non-voluntary, passive and active?
Yep, lovely. Or you can go across, doesn't really matter as long as, yeah. Please do not spend all of your essay going over these. This is just so that you understand them when you mention them in passing. If you get really bogged down with voluntary versus non-voluntary, etc., unless the question asks it, of course, very GCSE, you have to be so careful with euthanasia that you don't revert back to a GCSE style answer. This is very GCSE territory. It is simply there so that you know the difference between them and know the difference between which is legal and which is not legal. Please don't forget to summarise as best as you can because we have to get this covered in this lesson. Box underneath then is split into again 3. The first box is for the James Rachel's point. James Rachel's argues that passive euthanasia is actually worse as it's cruel and the process of dying may be long and drawn out. I think that this is an excellent point. I think James Rachel's here really, for me, does sum up passive euthanasia. What passive euthanasia supports or allows is for people to, for example, Tony Nicholson, to stop eating. You're withdrawing food, or not having chemotherapy, or turning off life support machine. Yet the process of dying might be an awful lot more drawn out. It took days for Tony Nicholson to die when he stopped eating. That's nicer than just giving someone a lethal injection. How is active so wrong when actually it's the kindest thing to do to someone? We do it to animals, yet we won't do it for humans, yet we'll let someone starve themselves to death because that's a better alternative. It just doesn't quite make sense, and that's what James Rachel's is arguing. Box to the side is for your acts and omissions. This again links in with active and passive euthanasia. So active euthanasia is the acts. That is doing an action that causes death. Omissions is not doing something to help. You are omitting to help. You are dealt by the law very differently. So omitting is just stopping or refraining from carrying out an action. So the acts and omissions is a legal argument, and basically it's something you'll cover in law. It's just the idea that there's a difference between actually doing an act of killing someone, like covering someone with a pillow or giving a lethal injection. It's very different from omitting to help someone. So not feeding them, removing something that might help them. To the side is for the argument from proportionality, that you have to weigh up the proportion of illness versus the proportion of death and suffering. Again, this is just something you would mention in passing, but what it's saying is the suffering so bad that actually bringing upon death would be better, or is the death you would bring about worse than the illness that you've got? So it's just looking at the proportions of illness versus bringing upon death, bringing about death. Large box underneath then is for this slide on personhood. Personhood is an extremely important part of your essay. If it talks about issues or moral problems or moral dilemmas, this is what you talk about. Personhood is the issue. This is one of the issues you would discuss. Personhood is what separates a human being from a person. Some people believe there's no such separation. Some people believe you are a person regardless. Some people believe you can be human but no longer a person, like someone in a PVS or a persistent vegetative state. The first time you use PVS in your exam, put persistent vegetative state so an examiner knows you know what it means. Afterwards you can just use PVS, that's fine. Because writing persistent vegetative state each time is a bit excessive. But if you are in a coma, are you still a person? You can't interact, you can't necessarily breathe on your own, you can't eat, you can't blink, you can't communicate. Are you still a person, or are you just a human being with organs? That's what this raises. This is the question it asks. If you argue that someone in a PVS is still human but not a person, can you euthanize? Grieseth and Boyle, however, stress the importance of personhood. They reject the view that one can just cease to be a person. They say a person in PVS has not lost what makes them a person. Humanity and personhood are one. So they argue that you can't just lose your personhood. You are always a person, even if it's in a PVS. Box underneath, sanctity of life, you've got the two separate sections coming off from it as well. So sanctity of life goes in the large of the two boxes. Again, this is your second issue you have to discuss. Personhood is the first, Sanctity of life is the second. Sanctity of life is about all life being sacred. It's special within itself. All life is made imago Dei, image of God, with a spark of divinity, meaning every person is made with a part of God within them. There is a specialness given to humanity, such as given to Adam, who was able to name all the animals. There was a specialness given to humans with stewardship over them. Please, I need to make this clear now. Sanctity of life is not just a religious concept. You can believe in sanctity of life even if you are not a Christian. It is a very predominant Christian teaching because of the imago Dei and spark of divinity, and obviously you're not going to believe that if you're not a Christian, but people that are still atheist or agnostic believe there's a specialness with human life. They believe in sanctity of life. This is just a big teaching within the Christian church, though. Yeah.
But it says all life is sacred, it means all human lives.
Yes, all human life. Hence why you can euthanize animals. Yeah. Box to the side, just because I am conscious of time, box to the side is for strong and weak. This is where you need to move into in an exam. Otherwise, again, you're at the risk of GCSE answers. So strong goes in the top part, weak in the bottom part. Strong means pro-life or vitalism, this idea that you should save all life. All life is sacred and possesses a God-given soul. Strong sanctity of life is most often devout Christians. No ordinary or extraordinary means justified termination of human life. So no reason should you ever end life. You should do everything in your power to keep life going. The moment of conception, so egg meets sperm, moment of conception till natural death. No exceptions. All innocent life must be protected. This is like the first primary precept. Weak sanctity of life, killing an innocent person out of love is not murder. Murder implies you have an ulterior motive. Let's kill grandma so we can get her inheritance. That would have an ulterior motive. Killing someone out of love, so this is a bit more of the agape situation ethics, killing someone out of love for them is not murder. In exceptional circumstances, it is not wrong. No one deserves to endure a life of extreme pain. Life is a gift, not a burden. This point is very important. Everyone always says, or Christians always say, life is a gift from God. Yeah, but you shouldn't be burdened with a gift. It's not a gift if you're burdened with it. And also, when you have a gift, you should be able to do what you want with it. If you get a gift that you don't like, you should be able to take it back to the shop. If you don't like a gift, it's your decision of what you want to do with it. So it's kind of like God gives you a gift, but then he still owns you. You know, someone gives you a gift, but then they still have ownership
like
over.
The abusive boyfriend.
Exactly, it's like an abusive boyfriend idea. Peter Vardy actually does use that as an example for
Oh yeah.
falsifications. I mean, you can't prove false, that's right. So these are territories that you do need to go into. Your link could quite easily be strong means more natural law, weak means more situation ethics. So obviously those are the links you can make. You're doing ever so well, everyone. I know you are getting tired now at this point. Box to the bottom is for quality of life, and there's Peter Singer at the bottom. The quality of life, again, I know the box is quite small, so do your best. Human beings should be able to live dignified lives and end life with dignity, respect of a person that desires to live or die, so you should respect what people want. The Alkmaar case was in the Netherlands in 1984. A 95-year-old woman no longer could eat or drink. She asked a doctor for a mercy kill. After the doctor discussed this with her son and herself, they decided that life was unbearable. The doctor ended her life. In court, he argued it was his legal duty to alleviate suffering. It was this case that contributed towards the legalisation of euthanasia in the Netherlands. Peter Singer, again, very, very important point here, argues that there's a move and a shift away now from sanctity of life, just going, oh, life is sacred, you have to preserve it in every case. No, he says we're moving away now to looking at the quality of life. The quality of life can be judged by the person themselves, and if they believe they want to end their own life because their quality of life is so low, they should be allowed to do that. Just saying all life is sacred so you can't, It's just not good enough nowadays. It's not good enough anymore. As soon as you're happy, do turn over your sheets. Excellent. The box at the top of the page is quite an unusual structured one. This is because it's going to be your examples. The first one is the Tracy Latimer case. So that goes into the first box. Again, I need you to summarise this. You probably will, those that covered it last year will remember this one. Basically, 13-year-old Tracy had cerebral palsy. She had severe mental and physical disabilities. This is a true case. Due to a lack of oxygen at birth, she had no voluntary control over her muscles, unable to walk and talk, and was in constant pain. She cannot be given painkillers as these cause dangerous seizures. She needed repeated treatment and surgery, was attended a special school, but she was described by her teachers as having a happy disposition, so often smiling. So happy within herself, happy disposition. Please just pick whatever you need out of that for the first box, because there is a couple more boxes to go with that one, so it's not the last box for that Tracy Latimer case.
How do you spell a surname?
Coming on the next slide. Yeah, but it's exactly... Yeah,
Okay.
it is like it sounds. So within the same box, please, Robert Latimer was her father, so there's Latimer. Put his daughter Tracy in the trunk of his car and connected the hose to the exhaust. Tracy died of carbon monoxide poisoning on the 24th of October 1993. The question is he guilty of murder? And so this obviously shocked a nation, but this was because euthanasia was not legal.
Was that in the US or the UK?
America was it?
Yeah, I want to say America.
It looks American on that. It looks American.
I'm only going off the name sound in America.
Yeah, someone might just Google it.
He looks American.
So just get your dates down, get your names. So Tracy Latimer, Robert Latimer, get the date, 1993, get that she had cerebral palsy, get that how she died. Latimer was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 10 years. A retrial found him guilty and sentenced him to 2 years. So on a retrial he was found guilty again, but on a sentence to 2 years. Why? Because first of all it was seen as murder, then it was seen as a man that was pushed to the brink, trying to do the most loving thing for his daughter, and obviously that was him with his daughter. And you can judge an image, you can judge a picture, you can think, is he a loving father, and did he do it out of love, or did he do it just because he'd had enough? And we don't know, but the courts did decide only 2 years punishment. This is the reality of these situations. When you think of euthanasia, people, and we found it, Alfie, is it American? Pardon?
It's Canadian.
Canadians, okay, right. When you think of euthanasia, you say, oh, if someone's in really bad, serious pain, you should euthanize. When you see the reality of these cases, though, it's not as easy. So when you are talking of these cases, think that they are real. They are real cases with real people. Box next to it then is for Diane Pretty. So what I'd like you to do, please, is I'd like you to write the Diane Pretty in the larger of the middle boxes. I'd like you to write Tony Nicholson in the column next to it, because you need to go away and do your reading on him. You've got it from your AS material. So Tony Nicholson goes in the long, thin column. But the bit underneath that's attached, so I'll say this again in a second, is for palliative care. So you're going to have Tracy Latimer, Diane Pretty, Tony Nicholson, and then you're going to have your palliative care, because that goes with all of them. Palliative care is hospice care. It helps people with incurable diseases. It makes life comfortable as possible. You get psychological, social, spiritual support for you and your family. It's a holistic approach in order to help the person who is dying. So once again, you've got the Tracy Latcham in the big box, you've got Diane Pretty's case. I want you to put Tony Nicholson in the long, thin one next to it, because you need to go away and get your dates, your names, your figures for that as well. But the palliative care goes in the thin box underneath, because that links to all of them. Diane Pretty was quite a common one that was used often in GCSE because it really made the news for a long, long time. She campaigned vigorously to be allowed to be euthanised, but she was denied the right to die. She had motor neurons disease. She argued that she wanted to die with dignity, and she says the law has taken away all of my rights. She was really one of the first cases where the issues with Dignitas, the euthanasia centre in Switzerland came into this, because what her husband said was, if we take her to Switzerland to be euthanised, is that then okay? And they went, we will try you for murder when you return, because your intention is purely a one-way ticket for your wife to die. That is against our law. Even if you do it in another country, we will try you for murder. He had 2 young children at the time, so therefore Diane Pretty was not allowed to be euthanised. Otherwise, her husband would have been potentially accused of murder. So Tony Nicholson goes into the box next to it. The final column is for baby Charlotte. 2005, Charlotte was born prematurely and with severe brain damage. Against the wishes of her parents, the High Court ordered doctors not to resuscitate if the baby fell into a coma. Why? Because of her underlying condition did not justify medical assistance that she was being given to stay alive. The point here is, it seems to work in some cases and not others. Why is a baby's life any different from somebody that's older with motor neurons disease or locked-in syndrome like Tony Nicholson? Why did the courts allow baby Charlotte to die when the parents didn't want it to happen, where Tony Nicholson wanted it and he wasn't allowed?
There was a story like this one recently.
I can't remember what it's called.
I don't know if it has.
Is it Charlie? Is it baby Charlie? There is one being...
The courts, yeah.
They wanted to take him to
That's
America
right.
and then to other countries, but they
Yeah.
couldn't.
Definitely look into, was it definitely called baby Charlie? Look into the case, get the family, because that's happened in 2017, so it's very, very recent. And basically what happened in that case was the baby had very serious problems, and the family actually raised about £1 million to take the baby to America for new trials that might have saved his life. Our court said, no, you have to let your baby die. So it wasn't even going to cost our country anything. They raised the money to do it. Say again, Sam.
When you learn it like that, though, it obviously sounds really bad, but they said that the baby couldn't fly up. Like,
Yeah, it would cause more suffering for the baby.
They were doing it, the courts were doing it out of sort of didn't want the baby to like
suffer further. Yeah, the court's absolutely right, Sam. The courts didn't want the baby to suffer anymore, but it was against the family's wishes. It was against, and the baby was going to die anyway. So it was, for them, they wanted to at least try to save its life with this treatment, whereas the court said yes, it was the most loving thing to do was to let the baby die. Box underneath then is for the slippery slope argument, Helga Kuss, how we pronounce her name. Basically, people argue that euthanasia cannot be made legal in this country because of slippery slope. Basically, we do it for Tony Nicholson, we do it for Diane Pretty, we do it for people that really want it, and then, oh well, grandma's becoming a bit of a nuisance, or, oh well, we need an extra spare bed for this person, so we'll just euthanise them, or whatever it might be. People argued that all of a sudden we would do it based on personal convenience. We would want to save the NHS money, the family might want inheritance, so we'd start doing it for the wrong reasons. Whereas Helga Kuss argues absolutely not. She says in the Netherlands, it hasn't turned into Nazi Germany, where they're euthanising people because it makes life easier. They're not euthanising the disabled, they're not euthanising people of limited intelligence or whatever it is. She says we're not euthanising people for any other reason than because it's the kindest thing to do out of mercy and respect. She is president of the World Federation of the Right to Die Societies. She's also a utilitarian, so it's good to see her background. We're going to have to speed it up because we are running out of time, so just start to label your boxes as best as you can. and you'll have to go in and fill it in more detail later. Box underneath then is split into two. The first is for Daniel Maguire, the second is for Jonathan Glover. So the first bigger box is for Daniel Maguire. Daniel Maguire says that it's important to respect and value life, but this should not mean that you are obliged to prolong it in every situation. He rejects the idea that God alone has the power over life and death. God decides when you are born, God decides when you die. Really? How does that really work? If God alone decides, then we're not just God's property. Like a dog is a property of yours. You can decide when you euthanize an animal. You probably have to give a vet a good enough reason, but it's still your choice. RSPCA euthanize animals when they can't care for them any longer. And so this is the idea that if God decides when we live and die, are we not just God's property? Are we not just God's animals? And so what he says is, yes, we should value and respect life, but we shouldn't intervene. We intervene to save life and preserve life. Why is there any difference between doing this and then ending life as well? We should have the decision about whether we end life or whether we preserve life. That's our decision, not God's. Jonathan Glover wrote the book Causing Death and Saving Lives. Very, very good book for euthanasia. It's one of the most predominant books out there specifically aimed at euthanasia, so it's a really good person to mention in your exam. Jonathan Glover says to refuse to provide help is a very serious denial of the person's autonomy over the matter of his own life and death. Basically, refusing to help someone who wants to die, who was made using their own autonomy, their own free will, decided they want to do that. Refusing to provide that is a serious denial of what that person wants. Alright, box underneath then is joined. This is for the first slide, the for and against. So again, apologies that there is a lot on this slide now, but we are running out of time. First thing I have to make very, very clear. Never, ever in any of these exams, for euthanasia, for business or for sex ethics, ever say an argument is for support of something or against something. If you start an essay, and I've read it many, many times, natural law is against euthanasia. This is because, no, you're wrong. Absolutely flat out wrong. All arguments can go for or against something. It depends how you use the argument. And so what you need to say is, to an extent, natural law would see it as wrong because, to another extent, natural law might see it as right because you have to do it from both sides of the coin. You're not contradicting yourself if you do that. You have to see it from both sides. So, natural law for euthanasia, what this means is it supports euthanasia by, first of all, you don't have to give the patient treatment. Sorry, the word left me there. You don't have to force a person to have treatment because treatment is excessive. So you don't have to do that. Animals don't have treatments in the wild. Second of all, doctrine of double effect allows you to give morphine. Third, burdensome treatments which unnecessarily extend life is not required or even allowed. Even the Hippocratic Oath, so the Greek physician Hippocrates that it comes from, appears in favour of a form of euthanasia for incurable patients. He says a doctor should refuse to treat those who are overmastered by their disease, realising that in such cases medicine is powerless. What that says is, people always say you take the oath, you have to preserve all life. Hippocrates himself says, not if they're overmastered, which means just taken over by disease. You don't have to keep helping someone. On the other hand, natural law is against euthanasia because at the end of the day you have to preserve all life. First primary precept, preserve life. Also, the Hippocratic Oath does say you have to preserve life. It says that I will give no deadly medicine to anyone if asked, nor suggest any such counsel. What that means is you should never offer it and you should never even discuss it. So if you're asked for it, you've got to say no, you should not offer it either. They take the Hippocratic Oath as one of the most fundamental, it's like someone swearing on a Bible, a doctor takes it to the grave. It is one of the most serious things that they do is take the Hippocratic Oath. Another reason why natural law is against it is because it's concerned not simply with the physical body but the whole person. Everyone is linked with God's ultimate plan. Ending one's life ends the possibility of pursuing other precepts like education, and it's an apparent good. You think you're doing the right thing by alleviating pain, but it in fact fails to reach telos. That's a fair point. Box to the side then, sorry, is continuation of natural law. What is natural? Is life support machines natural? God is saying, give me this life, give me this life. And we're saying, hang on a minute, we can keep them alive a bit longer with a machine. Is that natural? Because we're preserving life. Also, have we used our reason to work these things out? So as God said, hey, yeah, but I gave you reason. You were meant to work out at this point how to preserve life better. Does this mean turning off life support machines and not preserving life is acceptable then? Should you not use anything unnatural to help them? Does this also mean that all medicine and interventions that keep a person alive are unnatural? Obviously some medicines are natural, aren't they? Pacemakers are in line with preserving life. So this slide is just raising the complications of there is no black and white with natural law. There is a lot of grey. Yet, natural law argues that we are given free will and the God-given ability to reason. Our doctors not using their reason to preserve life. Therefore, this is just natural progression. If anything, that is the important bullet point to get down. That we have been given reason, we have been given free will. Therefore, because we have found pacemakers, life support machines, etc., because of these things, is it therefore just not natural progression? The point of this is to show there is no clear-cut answers. Your job in the exam is to explore all the different avenues in your essays and weigh up which views are more or less helpful. Excellent. Final column is for natural law and the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church argue it's a rejection of God's sovereignty and loving plan. So sovereignty meaning his power, his sovereignty, and loving plan. It is also wrong, according to the Catholic Church, to ask someone to assist your death because you're violating the divine law. Do not murder. However, the Pope, I think it might be the previous Pope, Pope Paul, that said this. I'm not quite 100% sure. I don't think it's Pope Francis. It might be. But the Pope makes a distinction, however, between ordinary and extraordinary means. This is really important. These terms are used in the medical profession, not just religious. Basically, ordinary means feeding them, doing whatever you need to sustain life, so what you're given in hospice care. Extraordinary is things above and beyond, like surgery, chemotherapy, life support. What the Pope argues is you must give ordinary. You do not have to give extraordinary, which means is you have to give them the basic human care, but if you don't give the treatment they need and therefore euthanasia happens, the passive euthanasia, that is acceptable. So in a way they do support passive euthanasia. You don't have to do extraordinary means. One last slide. I am extremely impressed with what you've got done today. Last slide, it's a skinny one, but that's all Joseph Fletcher really has and deserves. Situational ethics, basically, it's that. Don't have to worry about the bubble. He was the president of the Euthanasia Society of America between 1974 and 1976. They probably found out that he wanted to euthanize Down syndrome babies and took him off. I don't know. But he was the president of the Euthanasia Society. He believed personhood matters, so he supported personhood, dignity in the patient's autonomy, and he says quality of life is more important than sanctity of life. So Fletcher supports Singer, or Singer supports Fletcher, however you want to say it. So quality of life more important than sanctity of life. Person's dignity and autonomy. However, what makes Fletcher interesting, he talks about when a person is no longer a person. So what he says is he gives 12 human criteria where you judge whether a person is a person still. You need minimal intelligence, self-awareness, self-control, sense of passage of time, so time passing, knowing time passing, concern for others, communication, control over your existence, curiosity, possibility of change, balance of reason and feeling, identity and thinking. Very, very well done today. Excellent job.